Hey, Bellator Society. It is Tracy and Fran, and we are live today. And we are so excited. We have a guest, Dr. Bill Bellet, who is a PhD in clinical and consulting. He's a clinical and consulting psychologist. He's out of Nashville, and he works with families, with individuals, with teens. And I'm going to let him give a better introduction of himself because I'm probably not doing it justice, but we're honored and thrilled to have him here with us today. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing superb.
Great.
I'm here in my office, and I'm actually still seeing patients and
Awesome.
clients that hopefully are symptom-free when they come in, and we practice social distancing and so forth. But just to share a little bit about myself, first and foremost, I'm a father and a husband, and I have 9 children, 8 boys and 1 girl. They range from 31 years old to David is now 13. He's our little surprise. But we have 5 of them home right now who are working from home. I had to come to the office to get some bandwidth.
That's what we want to hear, your tips on that.
All over the house. I am a clinical psychologist. My specialty is relationships. I do a lot of marriage counseling, a lot of family counseling. I also do a lot of consulting, particularly with family-owned businesses, resolving conflict over power, money, control.
There are problems with that? That's weird.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a biggie.
I thought, money would create problems. And I do a great deal of work in the religious communities, particularly for the Catholic Church. I screen seminarians, religious for several different religious orders and dioceses. And believe it or not, they allow a Catholic to screen for the Baptists, Methodists, Presbyterians. This is Nashville, sort of the Vatican headquarters for those Protestant groups.
That's true. Yeah.
It's where it's at.
And I'd like to say that I proudly tout myself as sort of a heretic in the field of psychology because a lot of the things that are taught in the realm of what I refer to as pop psychology, I think are more damaging than helpful.
Interesting.
Can you give us an example?
Yeah. You piqued our interest.
I mean, in many ways, if you go to graduate school in most psychology programs around the U.S. or around the world, for that matter, you're taught that you're to be completely non-judgmental in therapy. You're taught that we should never pass judgment on a person's practices or habits, but simply listen to them, help them to form themselves by speaking out and being able to complain. And we're also taught to help people feel as if they are victims and that suffering is a bad thing. And I guess I, subscribe more to the heretical, you can do better than that. And why don't you stop doing that because it is unhealthy and making you miserable? And begin to learn, instead of viewing yourself as a victim and sitting there and either anesthetizing yourself with Netflix or alcohol or pornography, to lift yourself up and go out and help some other people. It will redeem you and help you to find yourself.
Oh, this is music to our ears because this is why we asked you to be on our live stream today with us, because this is exactly what we want to talk about in the context of what we're all dealing with in terms of this COVID-19 sequester or seclusion that we're all experiencing together, and yet apart. And so many of us are turning to these coping behaviors, Netflix, making all the bread, whatever it is. We're finding ways to buffer, to make this suffering not feel so suffering. And yet, just as you kind of alluded to, there is as Catholics especially, there's value in suffering. And so maybe we can just start with you've told us about your practice in general, but how has the social distancing affected your practice, or has it?
Well, to be honest, it really hasn't affected it very much. I'm still seeing clients face to face. Of course, we practice social distancing and so forth so that we don't infect each other in case we have some sort of virus unbeknownst to us. If there are symptoms, then I will see somebody via video conference or phone, though I much prefer not to do that. I like to be in front of someone to really be helpful. I will say that the pandemic, as far as its impact on my practice, is I'm finding that a lot of existing clients or people that I haven't seen for a while are kind of coming out of the woodwork.
Yeah, I wondered about that. I heard that many therapists and the like and counselors are being hailed now because they're needed now more than ever, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, there are many more people complaining of loneliness, emptiness, confusion, a lack of sense of meaning in their lives because they were so used to having routines.
Yeah.
And now, they're kind of stuck at home and after a while, you go stir crazy,
Tell me more about that.
My daughter had an abscess tooth about a week ago, and we almost had to go to the ER like twice, and we went to the dentist and the orthodontist and the endodontist, you name it. And my husband was like, that was kind of fun because it got us out of the house, like gave us something to do. And although obviously we wouldn't wish that on her because she was in a lot of pain, it was like, oh, I'm coming. Can I come with you? We like all piled in the car like we're going, on a date.
Well, I saw something that my wife showed me. There was some woman who got on Facebook and she was talking about how wonderful her life was with all of her kids at home. And just how the family warmth and togetherness and so forth was just so wonderful. And as she's speaking, she's holding up signs that read, "Help." I'm going crazy. Nobody's helping with anything.
Such are the subtitles of all of our lives right now.
And like, why?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, like, while I don't want to be complaining that all my kids are home, and it actually has been wonderful. I've enjoyed it to some degree, but it's just not normal. I mean, it's not. After week 1 was awesome, and I would say our family's doing great, but it's not normal to have an 18-year-old sitting on the couch or in the house 24/7. Like, this is kind of the time where she's usually out going and doing things. So there is an adjustment. Even I don't want to be the one complaining that my kids are home because I adore them and I've loved having them, but it's not normal. What were
Bill,
you saying?
how do you, I was just going to ask Bill specifically, you were the perfect lead for my question, is how do we deal with all of these things? How do we deal with this new normal? How do you advise your clients and your patients to adjust in a way that they don't feel victimized by the situation, but maybe just empowered to rise to the new normal?
Well, it depends on what people are struggling with.
Yeah.
I mean, basically what I want to say to you first is that for people that are suffering already, and you probably know this already, but statistically, we completely separate from the pandemic over the past decade, we're seeing some of the the highest rates of anxiety, depression, alarming, growing suicide rates among the young, and marriage problems and so forth. And for those people that are struggling already, the pandemic only exacerbates the problem.
Right.
You bring people together that are in strife, and you see increased child abuse, marital abuse. People that are addicted to pornography are stuck alone and they're looking at more pornography.
Yeah.
People are drinking more. So, to start with, what I want to say is that's the impact. For relatively normal people who are struggling, what my advice has been is what people are beginning to, I guess the most common phrase people say, I feel empty,
Yeah.
I'm around family, I love them, but this is, like you were saying, Tracy, this is not normal. And people start feeling like, when am I going to get back? And so what I'm advising a lot of people to do is form routines. You've got to get back into some kind of routine, exercise, preparing meals, planning out your day, having specified times, especially people who have faith and practice prayer life is stupendous. And for people that are not religious, I tell them, look, take some quiet time and meditate. Stay away from your phone and just contemplate, life. Meditate. If you're prayerful, that's a superb way to. This is a huge opportunity for people to learn more contemplative prayer. The other thing that I tell a lot of folks to do is, especially on clear nights, do what people did hundreds of years ago for entertainment. Go outside and look up at the sky.
Yeah.
Basically, though, exercise, prayer, pondering things that you're grateful for, being out of ourselves and going and reaching out and helping other people to the best of your ability, even within your household, are the remedies that I'm suggesting to most people for the boredom, for the isolation, and that emptiness that they feel.
Yeah.
I'll say nothing makes me feel better than doing something nice for someone else. I mean, that is true. There's some, that's not why you do it, but it is a positive feedback immediately, when you reach out to a neighbor or check in or say, I'm going to Sam's, can I pick up anything for you? I mean, I've caught myself trying to do that once a day or every other day, just check in on someone that maybe I haven't talked to in a while, because I know they're single or they're living, they live alone or whatever the case may be. Because as you're saying, people who are home, they're with their kids or with their spouse, they're feeling alone because this is not a normal situation we're in. But then there are people who really are living alone and are used to being on the go and are maybe, usually have a very active lifestyle and, work outside the home and all those things. And now, or they're take care of their grandchildren or whatever the case may be. And now they truly are alone. What's your suggestion for people like that? Because I think that I can't imagine being in that situation.
Well, you're absolutely correct. There are a lot of folks that, they rely on their work and if they're single, living alone. And it's the same thing that I have to do with a lot of priests that are, in remote locations in a parish where they don't have a lot of contact with, other priests is, I encourage them to get together and eat together and so forth. Now we have this problem with social distancing and not being able to go to a restaurant. What I would encourage people to do is, pick up the phone, call someone that you haven't spoken to for a while, get out there and make connection with other people. And the same thing is, for someone who is alone and single, and several of my kids are still held up all by themselves. And we talk to them 2 or 3 times a day.
Oh, that's wonderful.
video conference with them. We laugh, we tell jokes, we tell them stories. And what I say to a person who's lonely, again, reach out to other people and entertain them, help them, ask them if they need anything. It makes you feel more whole because people have a lack of sense of purpose in their life if they're not working. Even if they're not really starving or having, financial problems, just the dearth of time that they spend doing something purposeful, very depressing.
Yeah.
So get up and do something, anything for other people and make contact. The other thing too is, we have to watch out for other people and symptoms. Sometimes it's very subtle, but people will withdraw and go and reach out to other people you haven't heard from.
Yeah, that was
also to them.
That was going to be my next question for you is what are specifically some behavioral signs or symptoms that we can see in the people inside the walls of our home that might be very subtle, but we can kind of clue in and say, oh, I think they're suffering in a way that perhaps they have not been suffering before. An example that came to my mind is I have one child who, he's very introverted. He prefers to sit alone, play the guitar, or read or whatever. But like I've had to make a concerted effort just these past couple of weeks to say, come on down and sit with us, son. Bring that guitar with you, bring a book with you, just sit in the same room as us. But are there other signs that we should be looking for in the people who we're living with that they might be suffering more than we think?
Well, unfortunately, they're more subtle, especially for somebody who's already an introvert.
Yeah.
It's the same sort of things that we look for in everyday life. Withdrawal. Is somebody more distant than usual? Clinical signs of depression, sleep problems, crying spells, weight change, lack of plans for the future. People are sitting there going, well, I don't know when this is going to end. And, I'll ask them first thing, well, what are you going to do when it's over?
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, that's a bad sign.
Okay.
Instead, you want, and you also want to watch out for mood swings. People that go from low to high very quickly, or that are more prone to temper. They get irritated. They seem irritated. Those are signs that somebody may be suffering more so because of being cooped up and not having a sense of purpose in their life. And the other thing that I tell people is sometimes people are not going to manifest symptoms. They keep it to themselves. And we simply need to talk more. Tell me what's going on in your life. And, you talk to your kids or you talk to your spouse and ask them questions and encourage them to express their feelings. What are you feeling? And then you get to the bottom. Because a lot of people won't share.
We say sometimes I say to my kids, like, at some point you're going to get to the end of the internet because you've been sitting on your phone so much. But there is also a point of, I have asked my kids so many questions over the last few weeks. I'm kind of running out of things to talk about. Like, I'm going to be really honest with you. We've talked about summer camps. We've talked about school. We've talked about, friends. We've talked about dorm rooms for next year. I mean, we've talked about so much stuff that I think that is where I know where we are as a family. We're talkative in our house, and so that's not a problem. But I was on a walk with my youngest daughter, and I kind of just ran out of things to talk about. And I'm not kidding. Like, the kid came to me and said, I'm going to start looking up statistics. And I said, well, why? Because she's in 5th grade and she wants to be a scientist. And she said, because that's what they say scientists need to know. I mean, even statistics, like, there's nothing else I can talk to her about. I'm like, so
a couple of suggestions for you there.
Okay.
That is that, we do run out of things to talk about, but, to really capitalize on reading, one of the things we like to do is we have reading nights. And reading nights are not just, for everybody sitting around and reading. But for everybody to come in with an excerpt from something that they're reading, whether it's a novel, a spiritual work, or a poem, and they read it in the group and then you discuss it.
I love that.
Powerful, because, we can run out of, talking about summer camp and this and that and school and what's going on with the pandemic and news, which is confusing as all get out and you don't know what to believe. But to sit around together and talk. The other thing is, we really try to minimize in our family watching things on Netflix or Amazon on demand, but to actually turn on some historical pieces. We've been watching, World War II and Vietnam, Ken Burns things.
Oh.
Watch an episode and then have a discussion afterwards as a family. Everybody's
That's a great idea.
We watch an episode and then you go, wow, I learned so much about the history of the French occupation of Vietnam that well before, and we start talking about colonization.
I like that.
It's an opportunity to do things that you normally don't have time for, to talk about history together or about a reading. It's really fun. And stop talking about practical things, because
Exactly.
only frustrates you because you can't do any of them.
Exactly. That's a great idea. I love that, because we do love, my husband loves documentaries, and we do really enjoy history. So we're going to practice that tonight.
So, Bill, you mentioned in your reading night, which I think is I've actually heard Marie talk about reading night before, and it's always something like I make a mental note, like we got to start this, and we haven't started it yet, but I think now is the time we need to start this. And I love how you reference that not everybody brings the same genre or everybody brings the same kind of reading. It could be from a pleasure book they're reading or from a spiritual reading that they're doing. Tapping into that spiritual reading, is there something that you can recommend for people that would be a good spiritual reading during this time?
Well, I'm afraid that I am, decidedly Catholic in this realm. So
never apologize for that. Not a Bellator Society.
But my wife and I religiously read every morning In Conversation with God.
Yes.
Which, has a special reading based on the gospel readings of the day in the Catholic Church. And, that's something that we often discuss, or just it's sort of like breakfast, or brushing your teeth. You have to read In Conversation with God. And,
part of the day.
It's part of the day. And then, I usually add some classics to that by reading a few paragraphs from Thomas à Kempis. Just classic spiritual readings, that sort of thing. But the other thing too is, I believe that we get some of the best spiritual insights just from novels, from fiction. Of course, there are great Catholic authors that we
Graham Greene, absolutely.
Graham
Flannery
Greene.
O'Connor. Yep.
Exactly. And it provides insight for us to kind of think about in our ordinary lives. Because if we get overly religious about reading, don't get me wrong, we should read the Bible and we should read, various spiritual things. But, if we're not priests or sisters or religious, we're living in everyday lives, and we have to integrate our faith with what it is that we struggle with every day, learning how to suffer well, not to become victims, to smile and be cheerful, even though we don't feel like it.
We're working on that one at our house.
Helps other people to be more cheerful, and as a result, then we feel better.
Yeah. That is true. Cheerfulness is good medicine. Yep. Ditto. Same. Bill, as a Catholic psychologist, how do you integrate your faith into your practice with your clients? You mentioned that not all of your clients are Catholic and therefore, might not appreciate some of the more sublime things of Catholicism. But how do you, as a Catholic, minister to other people through your practice?
Well, all I can say is I've gotten much better at it. I used to struggle with it. But now what I've learned is that I don't ever have to mention God, religion, or faith to convey to people, most of what we know is true and good is natural law. Whether I'm talking about contraception and its evils, I don't have to bring up God. I can talk about the experience that a couple who actually have conversation about their intimacy really enhances relationships. And just about everything that we know is good practice that is taught to us through our faith is common sense. So I've gotten much better being able to talk about it. Here's the reality. I'll say to people, do you want to be richer or have higher than average income? Do you want to live longer? Do you want to have more positive mental health? Do you want to have great intimacy, better than most people are experiencing? All these things everybody wants. Well, here are the two things that all the research suggests account for the majority of variance in being able to get those things. Have a faith and practice it. Get married to a person of the opposite gender and stay married to them for the rest of your life. You will maximize the possibility of having all those things.
Wow. I guess that's statistical, right, Tracy?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I love it. So what are some ways do you think that at this time of social distancing will affect our behaviors moving out of social distancing? We were talking earlier about, calling people up, using the internet, whether for good or for bad, for Netflix or, for Zooming or whatever. I actually have heard you, Bill, give a talk that I think is available online about the dangers of pornography online, but also just in terms of being so attached to our technology. And your number one recommendation was detach, like remove it. Like that's how you're going to be able to be free of this burden. But right now we're living in a time where that's really all we have. How are we going to move out of that?
Are we ever going to give hugs again?
I know.
There are some various ways of treating disorders in the field of psychology. And one of them is known as implosion therapy. It's actually used often for OCD clients, those who are over scrupulous and obsessive compulsive. And it doesn't work for everybody, but it's often very powerful for encouraging a person to implode. In other words, to think even more, become even more obsessive, so much so that you get sick of it. And reject it. And I really think that technology has become such a normal part of everybody's life, we take it for granted. We're always connected to our phone. We're always, checking our email. And it becomes something that in my household, I ask people to shut off their phones, put away their technology. We're going to have a day off. We're going to have several hours where we have zero technology. Put your phones in a bowl.
Yeah.
And with the advent of this pandemic, I think what we're experiencing is implosion therapy. And people are wanting to get the heck out. One of the things we do is we're going out to the country. We go out in the middle of the woods and shoot guns and and bring our knives and whittle wood. And I really think that in many ways, I always like to think positively. this implosion that we're experiencing is going to help people to realize I need to get away from technology more when things get back to normal.
Yeah, I hope that's true.
I really do. I think it's going to help people. Now, on the other hand, again, for people that are already troubled, already addicted to pornography, it's just, and hopefully for them, maybe too, it'll be a wake-up call. There is life outside of the internet.
Yeah.
There is life outside of passive entertainment and games.
My youngest is 11, so she does not have a phone, but her birthday's coming up. And I said, well, what do you want to do for your birthday? Because we're probably still going to be home, like no party. She said, I want the whole family to put their phones away for the day. It's like, oh, okay. Because she has two older sisters. I know. It's like, oh, but she has two older sisters whose attention she adores. And, you know, we are kind of focused on technology way more than we ever normally would be, but that's her birthday, like party request. So I think we're going to be doing a lot of Uno and swimming and whatever else the child wants to do, but she's imploding.
That's great. And sometimes young kids are great at that. They really recognize what all the adults are doing that they don't even notice.
Right. Yes, they are great mirrors for us. Kind of heartbreaking sometimes, but great mirrors.
It hurts. It stings a little bit, but it's good.
So, Bill, towards the end of we're moving towards the end of our conversation, but right at the beginning, you mentioned, I think, 4 components to building those daily routines that will help kind of draw us out of self, lift us above this current circumstance. And they were to pray or to have some sort of meditative practice, to exercise, to do something of an act of kindness for someone. And then I think that you said, what was it? Gratefulness, to be grateful for things. Is there anything
on what you're grateful for? Even to write it down. Write down 2 or 3 things every day that you're grateful for. That you don't have corona. Or that your family is together. Or just something good that happened that day.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything else that you can think of? So those were kind of the 4 structured daily practices. Is there anything else that you would recommend to our watchers, our listeners, Bellator Society in general, that you feel would be, it can be a Catholic thing too, because we're a Catholic society, something that you would just recommend from your practice, from your personal experience to help us cope during this time?
Well, you know, all I can say is be creative. This is an opportunity that we rarely get. We are all so incredibly busy in our lives, and we have such incredible, we've gotten used to being beckoned constantly by lights buzzing or phones ringing, little dings that occur for different things. And what I suggest to people is be creative in shutting those things off and doing something, whether it's skateboarding, whether it's going out to the country, looking up at the sky, making up a new game, something that has human contact to really enhance and get out of the routines that we are so used to that never give us time to reflect on larger things.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is a huge opportunity. I am so thrilled that I get to do things, go out to my tool shed and organize my wrenches. It's just like, you know, and then to have the kids help me. And we've gotten more yard work and fun things done around the house. Here's something my kids did. You know, they love to work out. They all stay in shape, the older guys. Well, they can't go to the gym anymore. So we went to Home Depot, bought some 6x6s, some concrete bags, and they built a pull-up bar and dip bar outside in the yard.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, just be creative with the things that, you know, people used to do hundreds of years ago.
Yeah.
Build fires outside.
Right.
Right. And everybody's different, you know, and maybe people are not as outdoorsy or want to build things. It could be painting. You know, Walmart is out of puzzles.
I've seen people do puzzle exchanges like, all right, I've done these. Who's got something new? And I'll swap you, which I think is a genius idea because, I mean, how many times you can do the same puzzle?
Right. And if you tap on everybody, we used to struggle in our house with what movie are we going to watch tonight, and now instead it's like, what are we going to do? And people are coming up with ideas. And, sometimes it's, let's cook an amazing gourmet meal.
Yeah.
The next night it's like, let's just make pizzas and read dictionary,
Yeah, totally.
But this is an opportunity instead of burying yourself in the typical things. The other thing I want to mention that I mentioned before is you've got to create routine during the day.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure that you are exercising every day, not you, and it doesn't have to be long. Just it can be 10 minutes. Get your heart going. But if we don't find a way to have routines, that's when we can go astray.
Right.
When we begin to become self-absorbed and worried and depressed.
Mm-hmm.
Create routines and help each other maintain those routines for prayer, and so forth, and do it together.
Yeah.
Exercises, it's great. Let's do some sit-ups and whatever it is. Create routines.
I love it. I love it. Bill, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been fascinating and so helpful. I feel like we have all received a therapy session that we did not expect. So now we have goals. We have things that we can do, because I feel like the first couple of weeks were like, we were on some sort of like endorphin high. Like, this is all new and kind of exciting and we don't know what's going on. And then now, those dopamine hits of excitement are kind of lessened. And so now we're kind of hitting the wall a bit of like, well, golly, when is this going to end? What are we supposed to do indefinitely inside the walls of our home, or on our property, or, wherever we are? And so I feel like you've really given us some inspiration for creativity and for order, and for just thinking outside the box.
Good.
Order. I love order.
This is how people 200 years ago lived every day.
Yeah. And that Little House on the Prairie, y'all. Start reading Little House on the Prairie.
I was like, we need to reread this and figure out how they did it.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much. We have loved talking to you. This has been such a treat. And we will, this is on Facebook Live, but we'll package it up and we're going to probably put it on Instagram and our other social media platforms. So I hope everyone can, if they didn't catch it live, catch it later.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Be well. Thank you.